Welcome to The Old Men and the Three with JJ Redick and Tommy Alter, brought to you by 342 Productions. This is episode 158. Tim Legler. Tommy, we get into a bunch of playoff stuff with Tim. We also talk some legacy stuff, regular season versus playoffs. As always, Legs brings his unique and insightful knowledge of the game. Such a real pleasure. I thought actually this morning, Tommy, and you brought this up with me, his breakdown of the last play from game one of the Lakers-Warriors, the Poole three, I thought he had a pretty interesting take on it.
Yeah. It feels like he does this in his sleep. Just walks into the studio and has the best take on the most controversial play.
Yeah, I think everybody's focusing right now on the depth of which Jordan Poole pulled from. Legs broke down why he was so deep. First of all, him and Draymond didn't sprint back to get on the offensive end, which allowed the Lakers to immediately trap Steph Curry. And then once they crossed half court, they had terrible spacing. That's the stuff that we don't always see. And I think as a player and as someone who does this for a living, Tim does it as well as anyone.
Would you have taken that shot from that length?
I absolutely would have. And I said
That's
this.
what Tyrese said too.
Yeah. I think Tyrese last night was spot on when he was doing the live with Taylor Rooks and Channing Frye. But I'll say this. A lot of teams, and I don't know Darvin Ham's strategy on this, but a lot of teams do foul up three. And in general, it's between 6 and 8 seconds on the clock. That's generally when you tell guys, and you would have told them many times throughout a season, anytime prior to, you don't necessarily have to do it in a timeout. Like you just know, and this is LeBron James teams, you just know. So whether they were going to do it, I don't know, but a lot of teams do that. It's hard to generate an open look when teams know you need to shoot a three-pointer and you're going to put two on the ball on Steph Curry. So I have no problem with the shot. The way Legs broke it down, it's clear that he could have gotten a little closer.
Yeah.
But out of that rotation, given the time and score, given that he had 6 threes, and I've seen him make 30-footers before, no issue whatsoever.
Yeah, he could have gotten closer or potentially gotten an open Clay in the corner with a swing. They just could have run a real sort of set.
Well, the only thing with that is Jared Vanderbilt actually closed from the top of the key. So there wasn't the rotation necessarily off the corner. And if you watch on Poole's shot, Clay doesn't crash the boards because his guy's literally like face guarding him. So I don't know that he gets the swing to Clay, but I do know he maybe has a 25-footer and not a 30-footer. But I had no issue with the shot. 9 feet of separation, according to Second Spectrum, from when he caught the ball to where Vanderbilt was. He obviously made a close on him. The Monday morning quarterback on that shot, I don't love. I think it's in the moment. It's the right play. We're going to get into this Warriors-Lakers series a bunch with Legs. I do want to point out before game one on DraftKings Sportsbook, the Warriors were the favorites in this series at -150. The Lakers were getting +125. After game one, we flip-flopped that. Now Lakers are the favorites, -175 to win the series. Warriors at +145. I don't see a scenario. This is a little bit different because in SAC, they lose the first 2 games on the road. They're going back home. Obviously, the Draymond stuff being out game 3. But I don't know this is a scenario where they can afford to lose game 2 and then try to win 4 out of 5 games with 3 of those being on the road.
Yeah. Is there some of this right now with a guy like Anthony Davis with how he's playing? The Warriors have not faced something like this in a long time.
Well, they faced Jokic last year in the, you know what I mean? I think offensively specifically, Jokic, Anthony Davis, different players, but a big they can score this way. Like as much as we love Sabonis and had a fantastic season, all-star, all-NBA, all that stuff, Anthony Davis is a better player. It's just a fact. Anthony Davis is a better player. I think where the real value for Anthony Davis lies is defensively. And if the Warriors continue to play 2 bigs, which they've had a ton of success playing the 2 bigs, and frankly, their rebounding really suffers when Looney's not on the floor. And you could look at, there was a bunch of stats last year during the playoffs where they were just getting crushed on the glass when Draymond was playing the 5. They're smaller. Like this is the thing. There's a pin down action where Anthony Davis starts in the corner and a wing goes and screens for him. And you can do a bunch of different things. You can switch it. You can shoot the gap and have him try to pop back and make a 19-footer. I've guarded this action as the guy guarding the screener. There's different stuff you can do. I think one of the issues is if they're not going to involve LeBron James in the screener with Wiggins, so you're not going to switch it. And a lot of what the Lakers did last night was use that screening action to get Anthony Davis sort of curling, and that created opportunities to get to the hoop. It created opportunities to get fouled. It created opportunities to shoot 15-footers. So I like that action. One other thing I want to say, Tommy, real quick about this series. I think the adjustment is going small. The Warriors want to come back. They're going to have to play a lot of small ball. They need more shooting on the floor. The Lakers are just packing the paint with Draymond's man and Kevon Looney's man. And I want to point out one thing real quick. Because they're doing that, because they're essentially building a wall, and the Warriors rely on three-pointers to create opportunities at the rim. Because they're playing this way, the Warriors, who in general don't get to the free throw line, are not going to shoot a lot of free throws against the Lakers, who attack the basket with LeBron James, put the ball in the post and attack the paint with Anthony Davis, create spacing with their shooters. They don't foul because they have a wall. That's the reason the Lakers shoot a lot of free throws and don't foul a lot. It has nothing to do with the referees. It does nothing to do. The thing they're doing, they're top blocking Steph and Clay off the ball, and they're funneling them essentially back cut us. Because behind us, we've got two guys in the paint who are guarding non-shooters. Yeah. And that's the reason the Lakers had 10 blocks last night.
Do you see a significant difference in the Lakers half-court D versus the transition? Is that just a thing? Just both with going small, but just getting out and running, and then also with AD.
What do you mean by that? The Lakers getting out and running, or the
Warriors getting out and running, and then also just in terms of wearing AD down, because there's clearly even by the end of the game last night, he looked gassed. There's clearly get this guy, moving a little bit and see if you can.
I think that's another adjustment is putting the ball in Steph Curry's hands and playing at a pick and roll. Let him dance a little bit one-on-one. Off the ball, he's dangerous. And Vanderbilt did a great job of top blocking. Schroeder, Reeves at times, they did a great job off the ball. The game plan was sound. I've played against that. I literally, my last game as a 76er when we ran DHOs and we ran sort of a motion offense and similar in some ways to what the Warriors run, they top locked me every single play. And I was again, trying to fight all these different things. Darvin Ham, of course, was an assistant coach for Bud back then. So I'm not surprised to see that game plan. I like the idea. And your point about transition defense, I think where I look at it is after stops, not necessarily fast break, like we're going to go score a layup at the rim. After stops, getting the ball to Steph and using high pick and rolls, bringing Davis out away from the paint, that's what they've got to do.
Can I shout, before we move to the next series, I want to shout out D'Angelo Russell for a second. They're 5-0. When he scores more in the playoffs, when he scores more than 17 points, he had the tiebreaker with 1:26 left. It was a tough shot. He just has been. He's been a good player for a long time, so it's not shocking that he's doing this. But he's been very impactful for them in this run. And we're going to get into more of the stuff with Bron and AD and everything with legs. But the reason why these guys are winning is because of guys like D'Angelo. It's not just the two superstars.
Yeah, they've built a functional roster post trade deadline, and for the fourth or fifth time, I will give Rob Pelinka credit. Give him credit. It's NBA playoffs time. This week, everyone can score a no-sweat same-game parlay every day during the NBA playoffs. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app using code JJ, opt in, and place a same-game parlay on any NBA game. If it doesn't hit, you'll get a bonus bet back up to $10. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code JJ. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelplinema.org. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700 on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 and over in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gaming resources. Let's get to our conversation with the one and only Tim Legler. All right, let's welcome in our friend, my colleague at ESPN, Tim Legler. Tim, we were talking yesterday in the green room about regular season versus playoffs. And I know you played in the playoffs against the Chicago Bulls. I played in the playoffs a bunch as well. You watch it as a fan. You watch it as an analyst. It's different. It feels different. It looks different. What do you think is the difference? Because I have my own sort of thoughts on it. What do you think is the difference between regular season and playoff basketball?
I think for me, it's probably the fact that over the course of an 82-game regular season, you don't feel the urgency every night. When you get to the playoffs, I mean, as soon as you get to the arena, even before that, you're headed to the arena. Feeling that you have like the electricity in the air and the city, like what you're anticipating, how important the moment is, just everything feels so much more urgent than anything else. And you know for a fact that, the adrenaline on the court and, it's going to be more physical. Every possession's going to mean more. And I just think your senses are so heightened compared to a regular season game. That's kind of been my experience.
Do you think the play-in and the Heat and the Lakers would be the example of it this year is helpful, winning in the play-in in terms of getting yourself set for that?
Yeah, I think that what's happening is that more and more teams are realizing that, yeah, it's great if you can, roll out 55 wins and get a top seed or a top 2 seed, but there's other ways, and it's really more about making the right decisions with your team at the right time in the year and making sure that guys are ready to go when you get to that point. When you get to like April 1, closing in on April 15, that's more important than having your foot on the gas, for 5 or 6 months. And I think the mentality for a long time in this league was foot on the gas at all costs all the time. And I just don't think that you necessarily have to do that as much.
The notion of urgency, you're right. I think the natural reaction to that is, oh, well, guys don't play hard in the regular season. And I tend to disagree with that. The point about urgency to me is not the urgency going into a game, not the urgency in the first quarter of a game, not even the urgency in the fourth quarter. To me, it feels, Doc used to always talk about letting go of the rope. Don't let go of the rope. You're in a tug of war. Don't let go of the rope. To me, it's just human nature that in an 82-game regular season, in the moment, right, you just kind of let go of the rope. It just happens. And I'm not saying the entire team or even as a player, you're like, oh, I'm cool losing this game. It's not that.
Right.
It's like, can you break my spirit? Yeah. It's easier to do that, I think, in the regular season. I think about the Kings-Warriors series specifically. Like both those teams, not just the Warriors and their championship heart and all that, like both those teams refuse to allow themselves to let go of the rope. So the urgency piece, that kind of what it means to me. I think the preparation piece is certainly different. When you're preparing for one opponent over a 2-week stretch, that matters. Sometimes it's also why you have these wild adjustments in scores. Like you might have a Denver, for instance, game 1 against Minnesota gave up 80 points, right? They were prepared. Minnesota, they had a good game plan. Minnesota, they got punched in the mouth. Okay, we got to regroup. And then, of course, they scored well for, I think, 3 of the next 4 games. So preparation's the other one. The other thing I think about, because I think this is the biggest difference, is because of the preparation, that leads to exploitation. And it's easier to exploit strengths. It's easier to exploit weaknesses. It's easier to exploit matchups in the playoffs because you have that time to really prepare.
Completely agree. And that's also, I think, the reason why you see blowouts in the national championship game in football. You see blowouts in the Super Bowl sometimes, right? Because of what you just said. Both teams honing in on one thing. And so somebody's going to do that a little bit better. And they're going to be able to hone in on where we can attack or how we can prevent you from being at your best. There's no question. That's a great point about the preparation. Like it's the one time like you feel more prepared to play those games than at any point in the regular season because you just don't have time to do that. It's play a game on to the next opponent. And what are we talking about? We're talking about, it's probably better now because you have so much more technology at your disposal to prepare for who you're about to play. We didn't have that as much when I played. So it was, you're going to get a film session, you're going to get a walkthrough, you're kind of going to get a scouting report, and then you're going to play somebody. And then as soon as that's over, it's the next team. When you're talking about a playoffs, and sometimes you see it coming even before the season ends. I mean, in some cases, you don't know till that Sunday night who your opponent is. And even then, you're going to have a good 72 hours before you play at least. Maybe you have more if you're locked into your seed. So now you might have a week, and that's all those guys are doing. So you never feel quite as prepared in the regular season as you do walking out there the first time.
Yeah,
in the playoffs.
The point about the end of the regular season is funny because I would be on teams. Certain years, to your point about you lock up your seed, the other team locks up. We know who we're going against that first round. You have time. You have a week. You start thinking about it. Maybe they start, drip feeding you some personnel stuff, drip feeding you some game stuff. But in cases where you don't know who you're going to play, the staff start working on the 3 different scenarios or the 4 different scenarios a week, 2 weeks in advance. I mean, that's how detail-oriented this shit is now. And I think that's a big part of it. What did you think of Lakers' game plan in Game 1 versus the Warriors?
Well, first, so coming out of the Kings series, and I was saying it pretty much from about Game 3 on, at some point, you can't beat the Warriors unless you do something to intentionally disrupt Steph and Curry. You just can't let them operate in that sort of freedom. And I thought he had a lot of that in the Kings series. And it's not just about, okay, well, they're not as athletic up front, so you don't have the rim protection. It's different. No, it's not what I'm talking about. It's the stuff that the Lakers started to do right at the beginning of the game, which I expected Sacramento to do at some point. They never did. Not even in Game 7, right? You didn't even make the adjustment to play on the high side. No help responsibility who was guarding him, whether it's Vanderbilt or Reeves or I guess, D'Lo got him a little bit, whoever that may be. Literally, your only regard is to make sure he's got to run through your body to come up off the baseline to get to the ball. So you're on the high side, head to the basketball, which defies everything you're taught as a player in terms of jumping to the ball you man, all that stuff out the window. Your responsibility is to make sure every cut he makes is toward the baseline. He can't come out free. And I thought they did a pretty good job. Vanderbilt especially did a really good job executing that, particularly in the first half. He got loose a couple times. You're not going to be perfect in it. And then sometimes, like, Troy Brown didn't do it as good. He got beat a couple times trying to shoot the gap. Curry got a couple of looks when he was on him. But for the most part, Vanderbilt and Reeves in particular did a really good job of following that game plan. And I just think it's almost what you have to do. At this point, he's playing so well, you have to completely sell out to him to disrupt his rhythm on his running routes, where he catches it, how he gets a DHO, like whatever it may be. And I thought their game plan going in was to do that. They stuck with it pretty much the entire game. And then the adjustment that Kerr made later was Steph bring the ball up, right? Because now you can't deny him there. And now he's going to get a ball screen in the backcourt. He got a ball screen in the half court. Now it's a little bit different. Now you're forcing the Lakers to react to a lot of stuff, and he got loose on them a little bit. Whereas I thought for the most part, the first 3 quarters, they did that game plan, really a lot of attention to detail, did a good job on it.
So there's a lot to unpack there. I want to point something out because I do think the adjustment they eventually made was good, and I think that's the adjustment going forward, and that is just to put the ball in Steph's hands and allow him to play some ISO basketball, allow him to play more out of pick and rolls. 43 pick and rolls in Game 1 for the Warriors. I believe that is the 3rd lowest of the entire season. They had success, 1.21 per direct pick and roll, 1.24 when they involved Davis. You could see that late in the game where they're really trying to tire him out. Your point about top locking, that's the term that we use, right? Top locking is so interesting because I still framed a clip during First Take today, and it was the 2nd possession. And Wiggins is in the corner, D'Lo's off his body. Draymond and Kevon Looney are up top. Draymond has the ball. Kevon Looney's going to set a wide pin down for Klay Thompson. LeBron and AD are just sitting in the paint. The reason they can do that is because Looney and Draymond are non-shooters. Right. Steph's on the other side of the court, running up the sideline. Jared Vanderbilt is on his high side at like 35 feet, not even looking at the basketball. And on the other side, Austin Reeves is in a top lock of Klay, forcing him down to Anthony Davis. Now, he actually ended up making that shot, but the point is we're willing to live with Steph and Klay making back cuts into Anthony Davis, into LeBron James, and have them finish over those guys. And I mean, let's be honest, finishing over Anthony Davis is an entirely different task than finishing over Domantas Sabonis.
Completely. The funneling toward him, right? So even when on those plays when Steph was able to get a dribble handoff, Vanderbilt was coming around that so tight and so fast on his high shoulder so that the step back was not available to him because he was literally on the outside of his body as he was coming around the dribble handoff because he's just funneling him to this 6'11" dude standing in the middle of the lane ready to beat everything up. I actually did a touch screen. I froze one where it was second half, and it was so ridiculous. I froze it. You had Steph basically on the strong side, near the sideline, top of the key beyond the 3-point line, and Vanderbilt was just staring him right in the face, and the ball was right behind him on the wing, and he had no idea what was happening back there. 10 feet away from him at the top of the key to the 3-point line was Klay Thompson, and Reeves was staring him dead in the face, no idea where the ball was. And I froze it at a point in time where the other 6 players were within 12 feet of each other in the lane, basically. And it looked like something from 1957, right? Like that looks what it looked like. I mean,
the 6 players.
Correct.
The 6 players. I don't remember that defense on Dolph Shays.
No, but I mean how tightly congested offenses were back then. Like, and I was waiting for like at one point the touchscreen to just turn black and white on me, like just on its own, because that's what I was watching. That possession ended up with Vanderbilt like forcing Steph finally to cut into the lane. He went down to the baseline. He came around. He ended up getting a dribble handoff. Vanderbilt chased him right into Anthony Davis, who blocked a shot. And I'm saying, this is the degree. Listen, you can lay this out, and I think it's a game plan that should be instituted against him at times. Very difficult to find guys that are like that committed. They were so committed to it last night until he had that run later. So now we're going to see what is Golden State going to do to it. Josh, you talk about putting the ball in his hands, no doubt. But now the Lakers have to be prepared for the counter to Steph having the ball more initially, which he did not a lot of until the second half last night, or mostly really the fourth quarter.
How do you think they should keep AD fresh?
Keep him fresh?
Yeah, because we were talking about this before, just in terms of him. He looked a little gassed by the end of the night.
You look gassed. Guess what, AD? Welcome to the Warrior series.
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, we're making a big deal about the minutes today. I got asked about the minutes a lot, and I'm going, okay, man, I hear you. I know 40-plus minutes is a lot. We play 44. It's a lot of minutes. They don't have a lot of options, and their defense looks completely different if he's off the floor. Do you want to take that chance? So, I mean, it's adrenaline is going to get you through this. Make sure you're taking care of yourself on the off days, because I don't see like this substantial break that he can get that won't be super beneficial to the Warriors. He's going to have to gut it out. He's going to have to play these kind of minutes, because that's what it's going to take against this particular team, this particular player.
Yeah. The other thing about that you bring up, the minutes lost, right? Or losing the minutes when AD's off the court, or losing the minutes when Curry's off the court. This is partially, I think, one of the differences in the playoffs. Right. The bench matters to me. I've been singing that all season, because you need versatility in the playoffs. You need a guy, for the Suns, we'll get to the Suns in a little bit, but you need guys off the bench to give you a game that can maybe turn the corner, right? I think about that Celtics-Lakers from 2010, where Glenn Davis and Nate Robinson literally won them a game in the finals.
Right.
They were getting ready to lose. They were down and out, down double digits. I think it was in the second quarter, down double digits. And Nate Robinson and Glenn Davis essentially won them a game. So you need the bench. I think back to Game 7 Raptors series with Joel. Joel played 43 minutes in a 2-point game, and we were minus 11 when he was off the court for those 5 minutes.
Yeah, right.
It matters. So
yeah.
you got
No question.
Kind of buckle up.
I always call it, you need unaccounted for offense from somewhere, right? So the other team is game planning, right? And they got the whiteboard and they got priorities. And as an opposing coach, you kind of know the team's roster, and you kind of figure what they're going to get from each guy. And what it takes on a given night sometimes in a playoff game is, I didn't see that 14 coming from that guy, right? So you need nights like that. Look at Hachimura is a great example. I mean, he was so good in the first half of the last series. How many minutes did he play last night? I barely noticed he was on the court. And so it's interesting game to game, series to series, depending who you're playing, that's going to change. But you definitely need those X factor splash moments throughout your roster. I just don't see, I'll put it this way, I see how differently their team would look defensively to the Warriors if Anthony Davis is off the floor. So I just think those minutes numbers are going to be big for him, unless they can, get out to a nice lead and at some point in the first half, you give him a little extended rest, whatever it takes. I don't see that happening. I think he's going to be close games throughout, and his defense is just going to be a major factor. I think his defense was far more important even than his offense last night.
He had 11 minutes last night.
11, yeah.
One note, because I think the other adjustment is going small more. I'm not saying you don't start Draymond and Looney together, but maybe you don't play them 24 minutes together. Maybe it's 15, 14 minutes. You get more of that small ball lineup. You get more shooting on the floor. They had a 14-0 run in the fourth quarter when Looney was on the bench. The chase for the NBA title is in full swing. While the best in the NBA battle it out, you can get all the playoff action at your fingertips with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers can make a $5 bet and score $150 in bonus bets instantly.
Plus, everyone can score a no-sweat same-game parlay every day during the NBA playoffs. Open the DraftKings Sportsbook app, opt in, and place a same-game parlay on any NBA game. If your bet loses, we'll give you a bonus bet back in the amount of your initial bet up to $10.
I know everybody will be paying special attention to the Steph Curry-LeBron matchup, and as of right now, the Warriors are still 5.5-point favorites going into Game 2, despite losing Game 1. Download the app now and sign up with code JJ. New customers can make a $5 bet and score $150 in bonus bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code JJ. There has been talk after Game 7 with Steph, the legacy talk.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love all the legacy stuff.
Yeah.
But it is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to give Steph a notch up to Mount Rushmore automatically because of Game 7. But position here, I think, to certainly establish himself as one of the 4 or 5 greatest all-time players if they do end up winning a championship. I hate doing this, but I love your perspective on things. You're Mount Rushmore right now.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know you've been asked this, but I haven't heard it, so I'm curious.
Well, I definitely have 3, and then the 4th I kind of go right. I go around on. Definitely 3 for me, without question. Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Kareem. I go with those 3. Then I think there's great debates to be had. Magic probably for me would be of those other guys. Kobe, I think Kobe's in that discussion. You can't say Kobe's not in the mix for one of those spots. Is it Wilt? Some people would put Wilt Chamberlain there. I struggle with that because it's harder for me, I'll be honest, with guys that I just never saw play. It's just harder for me. I can go look at all the stats I want to, but I can also go look at how many teams are in the league and what the competition look like and all that too. It's harder for me, but some people would put him there just based on the statistical dominance. There's such incredible separation with what he did. So I think he'd be in the mix. Is Curry approaching that?
For me?
Yeah,
for sure. Even without a championship this year.
Can you ever recall a guy that was already a great player climb this many rungs in the ladder at this stage of his career based on last year and this year?
No.
I mean, honestly, because going into last season, most people, if the conversation came up ranking players, right? Curry, top 20 for sure. Some people might have said top 15. I don't think a lot of people were saying top 10 prior to last season. They win another championship. Post Durant, he has, maybe the most important game of his career in Game 4 in Boston, right? With dropping 43, down 2-1. So they get through that. And now here we are again. Now look, is it going to take him winning a championship to do that? Yeah, probably. He needs to maybe add one if we start to talk about Mount Rushmore category. That there's a lot of work left to do. He might not even get through this series, so we got to see how that plays out. But my point is to go from, say, 20th to now a guy that we're talking about possibly being in the top 5. He did all of that groundwork in the last couple of years, really, is when he elevated to this level. You just typically don't see that for guys in their mid-30s to have that much more to grab. That's what I've said all along. He's got more to gain from this whole thing, this whole discussion about him and LeBron in this series and where these teams go than LeBron does. See, I think LeBron is locked in to 2. He's not going to win a championship and leapfrog Michael Jordan. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
No matter what he does.
Truthfully, in people's eyes, and I'm not saying this does not, but in people's eyes, he's not going to win 2 more.
Correct.
And leapfrog Michael Jordan.
Correct.
Because everybody's always going to bring up the losses without any context.
Yeah, I just think that's the way it's going to be for him. So he's locked in at 2, and he's not going to get caught.
That's what I think too.
He's not getting caught from behind. Wait, what happened now? 3rd? Yeah. What happened here? That's not going to happen either. That's why I think he's kind of locked in. His legacy is very cemented, and this will be great. It may be one of the crown jewels of his career to pull this off with that team and beat Steph in the process. Great. I think he's locked in at 2. I think Curry has more to grab.
If Draymond doesn't have a certain punch in 2016, where is Steph, do you think, in this conversation?
Yeah, he's already probably there. He's already there. If everything else plays out the same way?
Yep.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The only thing I don't know about that is the domino of the Kevin Durant effect, right? So does he still go? So basically what you're saying is if they win that series, does Durant still go? We'll never know the answer to that. A lot of people say no. Maybe he would have anyway.
Yeah.
So if you're saying take that away, assume they win that championship, and everything else since then plays out exactly the same way that it has, he's there. He's already there.
I don't know.
He's top 5 for sure.
I don't know that whether there's an asterisk next to any championship. I personally don't believe there is. I haven't heard a compelling enough case. But with LeBron, there's always that. I think in 16, they bring up the Draymond thing. The haters he won the 2020 is a fluke win because it was the bubble, whatever. And then like Steph and KD for whatever reason, well, I know the reason, but they get discredited for 17 and 18 because no one was going to beat that fucking team. I think truthfully, I think you put those two teams against any team in NBA history and they're probably winning a 7-game series.
I agree with that.
And that's not a knock on the Bulls. Like I'll say that's probably the second best team of all time. Right. But it's interesting because I think with Bron, too, outside of 2011, they go back to those playoff losses. It drives me crazy. The context of the other, 5 losses, right? We go 07. He dragged that team to the finals. That Pistons team that
look
they
at
beat
that starting
were
lineup.
so good.
Yeah, look at the starting lineup he was playing with in Cleveland.
So good.
Yeah.
So then you have, 11. You have 14. That Spurs team. Tell me at that point in time, with the way they played that series, who's beating that basketball team? It was a great team. Coming out for revenge, all that stuff. 15, Love gets hurt in the first round. Kyrie gets hurt, breaks his kneecap. So they're playing, with Matthew Dellavedova chasing Steph around. They don't really have an offense. Mozgov is starting that series. Like, it's just whatever, And then he has the 2 years against fucking KD and Steph and the Warriors. So it's like I don't buy any of this. Like asterisk, we should. I think there's asterisks every season when we talk about this stuff. If a guy wins a championship, a guy wins a championship. However he had to do it that way. And LeBron, for whatever reason specifically, he had to do it with D Wade and well, guess what? Larry had to do it with Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish, and Magic had to do it with Kareem and James Worthy, and Bill Russell had to do it with John Havlicek and Bob Cousy and Sam Jones and Bailey Howell. I don't.
I love a Bailey Howell reference when I didn't see it coming.
That.
No, that's tremendous.
I was going to say to that, and this is sort of to the point of the Giannis comments from last week. Like Bron losing to those teams, that season is a success. Like get those Cavs teams in 17, like that was like objectively a successful season, even if you don't have a championship. And so that does feel like when you're looking at the whole body of work. It's not just like, championship or this is an L.
It's amazing to me because, look, there's a whole faction of people out there, obviously, kind of what you alluded to, that are just critical LeBron, no matter what he does, no matter what, happens in his career. Despite all of that, and probably being the most hyped player in the history of this league to enter the league, he lived up to it. And he still has had this kind of career despite all of that. I don't put asterisks on stuff. I look at it like this, and it was hard for me because of some of the players I loved so much that were like my idols, to watch LeBron kind of chasing them, catching them, admitting that he had surpassed them. Larry Bird being top of the list. Larry Bird not only was my favorite player and athlete, Larry Bird, this is not an overstatement, Larry Bird changed the course of my life because I was going to be a Major League Baseball player. That was my thing. I mean, legit. I could throw 90s in high school.
This sounds familiar.
That was my path. My dad was a baseball coach, right? And then I start watching this dude, come into the league right at the exact same time I went into high school. And I played both sports, but basketball was definitely secondary to me. And just watching those teams, and it wasn't just the Celtics team, it was watching the Lakers too. The way that they played, the rivalry, the competition. I was sitting there watching all those games with my dad. It just changed what I wanted to do. And then when I started to become a gym rat, because of that, that's when your ability to get better kicked in because I didn't need anyone else and I had such drive. I didn't need anybody. I just need a ball hoop and shoes and I'm good. I'll see you guys in about 8 hours, right? That's and it was perfect, tailor-made for me and my passion to do it. So he changed the course of my life. So to watch LeBron, like catching him, because it was like small forward, these small forward talk, it's like, oh, wait a second, man. I got to put him above Bird. At some point, it just got so obvious, like you couldn't make that argument anymore.
Couldn't hide your bias.
It was hard for me.
You couldn't hide your bias.
Now, and I played against Jordan a lot. And my whole career was the 90s. The guy won 6 rings. He kind of, didn't give anyone else a chance during that time. He's not going to pass him for me in my mind. Yeah. He's just not. And it's not even about winning rings at this point. It's just about the player. Yeah. Played against that guy. I've watched this guy a lot. It's Jordan. So that's why I say, for me, he's cemented where he is. If you talk about historical ranks, obviously he can still win more rings. Who knows how long he's going to play? But we're going to look at him historically, I think he's going to be number 2 no matter what. Now, you asked me about my Mount Rushmore. Let's go.
Oh.
So you got 4 names.
I have the same.
How many do you get to like this without any hesitation?
The 3. I get the same 3.
The same 3? Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, Jordan, Braun, Kareem.
Okay.
I get the same 3.
Then the debate kicks in your mind.
Well, I think part of it is you got to look at MVPs, finals MVPs, championships, the personal accolades, all-stars, not as much as all NBA. So like it's Kareem and Braun, the career points, all that stuff. It's like Kareem and Braun in a lot of those categories are 1, 2, or 3. You know what I mean? So those and Jordan obviously are easy. 4th, I'm the same as you, man. I don't like. I'm maybe missing somebody here. I've got like 9 other names written down, 8 other names written down. So I think Curry's in the conversation. I even without a championship this year, Tim Duncan, Kobe, Larry, Magic, Wilt, Russell, and I'll throw Shaq in there, man. I will throw Shaq in there. I think Shaq's peak, are we talking about peak, was as dominant.
Oh, yeah.
And I was in high school when he was winning those championships with the Lakers.
Yeah.
It felt different, I think, in terms of just dominance. People were building their rosters around the idea that maybe we had to play this guy in the playoffs. We need 20 fouls to do it. We need 24 fouls, whatever it may be. I think he's in the conversation too. I ultimately go with Magic. Right now, today, I go with Magic.
Yeah.
But I think I lean this is just me based on that stuff. I lean towards Kobe, Curry if I was to take Magic out of there.
Yeah, and so I'm not shocked. You and I kind of saw this exactly the same way. I think, resume-wise, forever, because to me there's a difference between player and career. Like they're 2 different conversations.
You hear that, Jason? You hear that? You heard it? Okay.
Because player, we're just talking about like skill set, right? Dominance individually as a player. Then career is like a lot goes into that, man. Like longevity, winning, all that kind of stuff, right?
Random luck.
All right, that too.
When we talk about the team stuff.
Definitely.
Some random luck in there.
And I thought Kareem had the best basketball resume of all time until LeBron.
Yeah.
And some people might say he still does, because I did this one trivia question. It was phenomenal. I was like, it starts out with how many guys, 2 MVPs, 2 titles. There's a list. And 3 and 3, 4 and 4, 5 and 5. And there's one guy left standing, 6 and 6. It's Kareem. Plus all-time leading scorer in history league, plus 3 national championships in college. You're going, that's the greatest basketball resume there is. Some people might say it still is. But now, and LeBron's got, 4 rings. He's the all-time leading scorer. How many finals? 10, right? 10 finals?
10, yeah. 4
10?
and 6.
Yeah, so who's got the better basketball? Now, he didn't play college basketball, so he didn't have a chance to win national championships. I don't think he's winning 3. It was a little different back then. So who's got the better basketball resume, Kareem or LeBron?
I just think the thing that makes LeBron the most interesting is winning in 3 different places. Because even with Michael, it's like you're blessed with another top 50 player. You're blessed with one of the great rebounders of all time. All those role players. Like I think that I think the asterisks are stupid with these Lakers championships or championship. But I basically think that the idea that you've gone into 3 different situations and done this is pretty. It's
a compelling argument.
You and I talk in the green room about this. We were actually chatting the other day about spacing back in the 80s. And I think one of the things that is interesting now to sort of on the other side of playing, when I played, the game moved a certain way to me when I watched it because I played.
Right.
And then now that I'm not playing, the game moves a different way, in a way, when I watch it, when I'm live at a game. With Jordan, when I watch him play, not when I was 12, but when I watch him play now, I watch film on him, whatever, highlights, he just moved. He moved differently than anyone in that era.
Yeah. I can assure you he did.
No, he just did.
I can assure you. He was also the only guy, and I played against, I don't even know, I never made a list, but I played against a lot of guys that were Hall of Famers, played with a lot of Hall of Famers. And I played against some great two guards. I mean, Reggie Miller, Clyde Drexler, Mitch Richmond, probably top three guys, top of the list. He was the only guy Jordan, that I ever played against that at no point could you relax ever guarding him, because he was that voracious in wanting to attack. Always. Because when you guarded Reggie Miller, yeah, man, you chase him for 5 straight minutes and
dumping it down to Rick Smith.
At some point, he's going to pop out. They're going to run, turn 5. He's going to catch the ball, throw it into Rick Smith's and go spot up. And you're like, okay, this is somebody else's problem for a little bit. I'm going to chill over here. Like Drexler, same thing. He'd ISO you. I mean, he was so big and thick and strong. And you're just like, my God, this guy. And then, oh yeah, he's got to throw it to Hakeem for the next 3 trips and just chill. Awesome. All of those guys kind of did that. Not him. Because of the dynamic of their offense and the way it was constructed, and there was no throwing it into guys unless it was thrown in the triangle specifically to get some sort of action for Michael out of that even. So you could just never, ever relax because the guy just wanted to relentlessly go at you. And that to me is what separated him from anybody I ever played against.
I got one more question on the Lakers and LeBron specifically. Do you think they can win this series with how he's shooting the basketball?
No. LeBron, you mean?
Yes.
No, I don't. I don't think they can. I don't think they can, because I think that's going to become more exacerbated each game. It's going to get to the point, assuming the Warriors can stay in this thing and win game 2, right? Get a split in LA. So now you're down to a best of 3 series, just 2-2. That is going to become more of a talking point, more of a factor, and I think it's going to be more kind of hanging in the air for that team. Look, Anthony Davis, as great as he was last night, and when he plays that well, it's very difficult for Golden State because he just differentiates the teams. He's not making up for all of that stuff if LeBron hits that point where he really doubts if this is going in from the perimeter. And he's not quite there yet, but he's trending in that direction. And at the line too, because I think the jump shooting then will affect his free throw shooting between his ears a little bit. So I think that, no, to answer your question, in a short answer, no, I don't think they can if he does not have a couple games in this series at least where he shoots the ball pretty well from the perimeter, because that shot's going to be available to him.
Yeah. Since game 1 of the Grizzlies series, so the last, 6 games now, since game 1 of the Grizzlies series, he's 6 for 41 from 3. 1 for 8 in game 1. I do think that's going to be a problem going forward.
Agreed.
Knicks Heat. There's a lot to unpack in this series. I think the context of this series to start, I just want to point out, right?
Yeah.
Because we could talk about different, we were talking zone, the way that he played zone last night, all that stuff. The Knicks were without Julius Randle for game 1.
Yeah.
The Heat were without Jimmy Butler for game 2. For me, it's the big picture stuff. I don't have the big picture stuff because I haven't seen the full picture.
Right.
I see the stuff on the margins, and in some ways, I think this series is very hard to predict or even analyze right now. Like I can analyze and say, RJ Barrett, since his first 2 games when he stunk against Cleveland, he was great the last 5 games, right? I could analyze. He's getting to the basket. He's getting to the free throw line. He's scoring in the paint. 5 threes last night. You can't always predict on his shooting, but it's like the big picture stuff. When I think about the teams at full strength, I don't know yet.
No, you don't know. None of us know. It's going in. I thought it was a coin flip type of series, meaning whole lot of 1 possession games with 6 minutes to go. And at that point, who steps up on a given night, who makes shots, who avoids foul trouble, somebody getting hurt, whatever, somebody having a rare hot night that you didn't expect. This is as close as I think it's going 7 games because I just think that's going to be the nature, right? Somebody's going to be down 3-2 and they're going to play with such desperation. They're going to get that to a 7th game. And then you get back to the Garden. That's where I see it going. But you're right. These are incomplete pictures because these aren't just other guys. These are like the guys. Like both them. Brunson, I guess maybe you could say is the guy, but Randall, equally important, and particularly because the Heat have not really had an answer for him all year. Kind of bullies them a little bit. So let's see. Hopefully, we see that in Game 3. What that looks like with both of those guys out there at the same time.
I think Randall looked physically. He looked good last night. We don't know what Jimmy's going to look like, and I think an interesting thing to point out with that potential matchup is, Jimmy guarded Giannis a lot when Giannis was available for the Bucks, and if Jimmy is at all hobbled and Julius is feeling good on that ankle, that could be a tough matchup for the Heat to figure out. I think ultimately we will see more and more zone. I don't know that we ever see a full game of it from any team in the NBA.
Right.
But Spo is so good at first of all, they run a great zone. He's so good at mixing it up. I remember calling a game last year in I think it was the playoffs, second round against 76ers. I called 2 Heat games last year. I called a Suns game as well, but I think it was the 76ers game in the playoffs. And there was, in live action, not off a free throw, in live action, Miami scored. There was 38 to 42 seconds on the clock. And as soon as they scored, he called out the zone so that Philly couldn't get the quick 2-for-1. And it's like shit like that where I'm just, obviously he's got years and years of experience, but like that to me, just on the fly, being able to communicate that, being able to recognize that, then his team reacting to it. It's just good stuff. And that's what I think makes this series so interesting, because I thought Tibbs did a great job of adjustments in that Cleveland series. So game to game, you're right. I think it feels like a 7-game series.
Spo is amazing. One of his greatest qualities, and I got to spend some time with him a few summers in a row down in Miami, and just, in a casual setting, and just talking hoops like we do in the green room. I'm just like, man, like you can't be more impressed how sharp this guy is. One of the things I love about him the most, and I preach this all the time to coaches that I've worked with, or even my own team when I coached them, he values guys for what they do well. Okay. That explains how you find all these guys that maybe other teams didn't have quite the interest in, and they have such an impact on really good teams, because he looks at it like, I'm going to value you for what you do well, and it is my job as a head coach to protect you from your weaknesses. I am not going to hone in on, okay, let's just take a guy, for example. Let's take a Duncan Robinson or Max Strus. He doesn't really create much off the ball screen. I don't really trust him handling the basketball. And then the first time he dribbles the ball off his foot, when he gets pressure, you're looking for somebody else to replace him. Like, that's bad coaching. His thing is, no, this is what you do well. We need that. I'm going to value that. The things you don't do well, it's my job to protect you from not being in those situations. And I think he does that better than any coach in the league. And so therefore he maximizes confidence of his entire roster. And obviously he's smart. He's a great tactician and all those things. A question for you, because we couldn't play zone when I was in the league. Right? That was later. I don't know how much you guys played it on any team. What team were you on that played it the most? Or would you say any team played it even enough for that to register on your radar? And did you practice it ever?
I had teams that played it here and there. I had teams that we would work on it. We would spend literally hours in a given 2-week period
and never call it out
and work on it. And then we'd do it for like 2 possessions,
Well, that's my point. Yeah.
But they do practice.
I know.
And that's what makes it so unique. Dallas is the other one with Rick. They've employed zone a number of times. Remember when JJ Barea would play in the playoffs, they'd have him show a bunch, but they played zone a lot. Even in that title run, they played zone. I remember, early in my career, I had to be in the rotation during February because we had a bunch of injuries with the Magic. This was my rookie year. And Brian Hill was like, all right, we're going to play zone. And I remember this game in New Jersey where I was playing pretty well on the offensive end. And it was like, all right, we're going to keep JJ in. And we played it for almost the entire second half, and they just fucking torched us. And that's what makes the Heat zone unique.
Right.
Because there are so many holes and there's so many ways to exploit a zone, especially when you have shooting and especially when you have guys who can make plays out of that little short roll area or off the baseline. If you have a big or even a Jimmy Butler who can make plays out of that area, it's really, really hard to play zone for an extended period of time. But But I think it's hard in the NBA to do it well.
That's why I asked you that question, because, I'm sitting here watching since the zone was instituted, and I've watched all these games and broken them down. Rarely do I see a team go to zone and it looks remotely effective. It's terrible usually because they don't practice it much. They kind of do it on the fly in a given moment because something's killing them. Well, let's call zone out of this timeout. And guys come out there and they're not into it. First of all, there's a million mistakes because you shouldn't be able to play an effective zone against NBA players. They're just too good, right? And you could put the ball in the middle of the short baseline, which can be uncomfortable for some people. It's a weird place. That's where you attack a zone in the NBA. Like, if it gets there, you're dead. There's so much shooting on the floor. But Miami does it.
You overload a side and you set a ball screen.
That's it.
You head towards the side.
Very few teams.
You got some tough decisions to make.
And the Knicks finally did some of these things in the second half. They weren't doing the first half. They were kind of a little bit befuddled by it. They got a high ball screen on the top guy for Brunson. He came off, knocked down a three. One time I loved it. Randall caught the ball on the left wing and just backed that wing all the way into the paint with like 4 dribbles to the point where he's about to shoot a little turnaround jumper. And finally, the opposite wing came running into the lane and he just threw a one pass directly to Josh Hart for a 3. But that was Randall like collapsing the zone, right? Josh Hart one time drove baseline, turned the corner, 3 guys flood to that area, collapsed the zone. He then kicked it out, one more pass, wide open 3. They didn't do a lot of that in the first half. And my point to all of it is you shouldn't be able to be effective, yet the Heat are, because they practice it and it's become part of like what they do on a nightly basis. Never, I don't think, to the extent that they did it in game 2. So we'll see what happens going forward.
Last night was the Heat's worst defensive rebounding game of the playoffs so far. Obviously, it's been a strength of the Knicks this whole run. Is there any impact with zone and defensive rebounding?
Definitely, of course, because you don't have a specific target to block out. There's always gaps and seams for guys to get running starts. Very difficult to box out in a zone. And I remember the Lakers played a good amount of zone in the bubble, and they had a massive back line. Right? They had just incredible size on the back line. They could go fingertip to fingertip, almost touch sideline to sideline. It's different. Very few teams play that kind of size. So it's hard because the ball goes up, you turn. You don't have a specific assignment. So it creates opportunities. I mean, I thought one of the biggest keys to the game too was Hartenstein. I mean, what he gave them, and particularly that one trip when he got 3 offensive rebounds and it ended up in a 3 and they were down 3 at the time. Stuff like that, you really hurt them. Robinson was in foul trouble a lot, but between the two of them, you still got 14 boards out of your center spot. And that probably number would have been closer to 20 if Mitchell Robinson doesn't get in foul trouble.
On the rebounding thing, and this is I'm going to get to Mitchell Robinson on this because I think it's a compliment to him. There are guys who rebound, like Domantas Sabonis rebounds the basketball, and he does a good job of pursuit on the offensive glass. I know he struggled. I know he struggled against Looney. Looney's literally relentless on the offensive glass, but he's like primarily defensive. He's a box out guy, right?
Yep.
Kevin Love's another. Like Kevin Love is great at box out.
A grounded rebound.
Yeah,
right.
and there's value in that.
Sure.
I played with a guy in Dwight Howard. I'll never forget it. My rookie year, BJ Armstrong, who was one of my reps at Wasserman, came to Orlando to check on me. I wasn't playing. We went to dinner afterwards, and we were talking about Dwight, and he's like, yeah, Dwight is able to rebound and grab basketballs outside of his personal space.
Right.
And that's what makes him – I don't know how many times I saw Dwight box out in the 6 years that I played with him.
Right.
4? I literally,
yeah.
I mean, it's single digits. He just had a great sense of where the ball was going to go, and he could rebound outside of his personal space. And I think Mitchell Robinson does that really well.
Yeah, it does.
And it's hard to box out a player like that.
Yeah, because you never really have them fully in check. Even when you think you do, they still have that ability to take one more step or extend another foot and come up with the bat. It's the most frustrating thing in the world. I would hate to have to deal. The guy that did a lot of that in my era was Rodman. Like the relentlessness with which he went, and the ones he could run down that nobody else could. Yeah, and then the stamina he had, particularly when what we probably did last night. Before the game, and the guys out there outrunning everybody in the court. It didn't make any sense. But Mitchell Robinson is one of those guys that the value to that, man. And Looney, how much he's increased his value in this league in the last couple of years, because it's now expected that you're expecting now. Because it used to be like almost like, oh, Loon, you get a layup or, get a tip in and everybody reacts to it. Now it's like, oh, no, this dude is going to get us, bad night, 15 boards.
He does this.
Yeah, this is who he is.
Yeah.
And he's also become a very good passer, which is really important in what they're doing too, especially if you're not going to be a non-scorer. So his value is exponentially increased.
Both him and Draymond, this is not like a jealousy thing, because I played with guys that were really good. DeAndre Jordan was really good at this.
Yeah.
The best time to shoot a three-pointer is on an offensive rebound. And you watch Looney, if he's not underneath the basket, and sometimes even when he is underneath the basket, if he feels like he can't get a clean look, Draymond does it as well. Get offensive rebound. Where's Steph and Clay? Like, they just find those guys so well. So Hero's going to be out. So the Miami Heat, when I say at full strength, I mean with a healthy Jimmy Butler.
Right.
With the Knicks, I mean with a healthy Jalen Brunson and with a Julius Randle. These two teams at full strength, either one of them. What are your sort of feelings about their ability to actually win the Eastern Conference and beat Philly or Boston in the next round?
Give either team fits and lose, ultimately.
Yeah.
That's how I'd view it. Whoever wins the Boston-Philly series is going to, I think, get to the NBA Finals. But 6 or 7 games wouldn't shock me one bit against either one of those two teams because of the way that they play.
The identity. Yeah.
That's it. And it's what you're talking about, not letting go of the rope. That typifies both teams. You're going to have to kill them to stop them. And so that just lends itself to being in close games. And then, that's when you got, on a given night, guy makes a shot, makes a play, you're right there. So I think they could go toe-to-toe, really scare them, but ultimately just not have enough to deal with Joel Embiid, Tatum, Brown, just not enough to be able to deal with all that offensive firepower.
Yeah, Tommy, we're recording this on Wednesday. We chose, look, it's hard to record and be timely in the playoffs. We chose today because there's only one game tonight, and that game is game 2 of the Boston-Philly series. 2 things. Joel got MVP. We always should mention that. I gave him some love today on First Take, but obviously on the podcast, I want to say this as well. I'm so happy for him. And I know I didn't vote for him. Okay. I'm so happy for him. Like I said when I announced who I voted for, all 3 of those guys deserved an MVP. Joel has deserved an MVP for 3 years now. Just a phenomenal season. And I think about not just the long-term growth, a guy who started playing, when he was 15 years old, but like when I played with him, how much he's gotten better, the mid-range game, the willingness to pass, the engagement on defense. It's like obvious at this point, and it wasn't maybe back then, but I would tell him this, and it was the truth. That's how I felt then. Like, he's the best player I ever played with, and a great fucking dude. So I'm just like, I'm proud, man. I'm happy for him.
Yeah,
I really am.
It's very cool.
And Jason and I were talking earlier, and I'm like, dude, I might decline. If they ask me to be a voter next year, I might decline because, like, it's hard for me. I want Joel Embiid. I will admit it. I want Joel Embiid to win an MVP. He's my friend. Of course I do. Right. I want Drew Holiday to make All-NBA. He's my friend. I want those things. You're a human being, man.
Like, there's personal bias and everything.
I still have to vote in a way that I think is unbiased.
Yeah. But listen, man, it's what are you going to do? You're human, right? You're human. And so you're not going to go out of your way to vote something that's clearly absurd because you like the guy. So you're talking about here, I love the word you use, deserving, because every year just several guys are deserving, right? And now it's up to us to go on the air and differentiate why you might lean in one direction or the other and make a compelling argument, but doesn't mean that the guy that finished second or third is less deserving. They all are. It's just really hard to win it. I always describe this, my analogy I always use for this MVP thing is like, imagine that, like the deli at the supermarket, and you take your number and you're waiting to go get your, half pound of turkey breast. And there's a bunch of dudes with that number in their hand waiting to get to the counter to get their meat. So you think around the league, like, who else is hanging around at the deli? Because Joel's been hanging at the deli. Like, he had that number in his hand. Meaning it's a matter of time before you're going to get your lunch meat. And there's guys like that. Like, I guess, Tatum.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He's got to get one at some point, right? It's coming. Yeah. Right? Who else would you say is in that
Luka.
Luka for sure.
Yeah.
I think maybe last year or the year before, maybe some people were thinking like maybe one day Ja. I don't know if I've given up on that, but I don't know.
I'd throw somebody else out there.
Okay.
And I believe this, and this is not because I was his teammate and he's a Duke guy. Look, if Zion figures out the process and embraces the process, he's that good. I believe that.
Can I give you another one?
Yeah.
Book.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
MVP?
That's a good one.
Depending on the year.
That's a good one. You don't like Book. That's fine.
No, I love him. But I
you
mean,
don't like Book. You were such a hater last year.
I love him.
You were such a hater last year.
How do you figure?
On our podcast.
I don't recall. Did I hate on Book?
He
No.
held his follow-through up, and you got mad at him for that.
Oh, that's right. Well, see, some of that stuff drives me
Legs,
insane.
I remember everything.
Okay, it's okay. I thought you were talking about something related to his game. I'm like, there's no way. I said something about Devin Booker.
I like that one.
That's okay.
By the way, going back to the voting thing,
yeah,
you're not going to just throw something ridiculous out there. So they released the MVP voting, and somebody didn't have Jokic in their top 5. And I gotta think that was just a mistake. I don't
know. I would doubt it, man.
How could you not have him in the top 5?
You'd be shocked. I mean, this happens all the time in baseball voting, and then it comes out after the fact of what some of these guys, their criteria for it. And they got some sort of axe to grind for some reason. Not that you'd have one necessarily with Jokic, because how could you? How could you? But there's something about his game that bothers that one voter to that extent that they wouldn't vote for him.
It's like the Utah guy that voted for Kessler over Paolo for Rookie of the Year. It's like you always get one crazy person.
Have we left anybody out of the Delhi conversation? Because I just don't want to. Is there anybody else that you think it's a matter of time? Like he's in the pipeline to get one. I think that might be it. Is there anybody else we're forgetting?
We have to be. I'll throw Ja in there.
Okay.
I'll throw Ja in there.
So Embiid just grabbed his meat. He's out. He's out. Okay, Giannis isn't hanging around anymore.
That.
Jokic,
you can't say he grabbed his meat.
His lunch meat at the deli. In the analogy, yeah, you can cut that out.
Let's get specific.
I don't need
meat.
Yeah,
he grabbed his turkey.
He grabbed his turkey breast.
He grabbed his pound of turkey.
Grabbed his pound of turkey breast and maybe some American cheese, whatever he likes to put on it. Some rolls, and he left because he got his MVP.
It's a great.
That's
analogy.
my point. Giannis is out of there. Jokic is out of there, right? Obviously, some of the older guys too. So it's more about those younger guys that you think it's. And Embiid was there, man. Like, it had to happen. And actually, for me, I'm glad because I do so much Philly talk radio, and they talk about that a lot.
Yeah, we can start. Yeah,
like a lot. Yeah. And now it's over. You don't talk about that anymore. Now it's all about just win a championship. That's all we can talk about now with Philly.
And he talked about that today in his press conference. It was great. He said this mattered to me, which I love. It mattered to me. I cared. I wanted it to happen. Fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah, I agree.
Acknowledge that you're chasing after greatness. That's fucking awesome. And then he said, but it's just one goal.
Yep.
The next goal is the championship. Right?
And along those lines, I want to add on to what you were saying about Joel and how he's changed, right, and matured. See, for me, the biggest change I've seen is when he speaks, when he does interviews, when he does post-game, all that stuff. Think about it. Go back to like earlier in his career. He would kind of like talk about himself and who he was and like, you know what I mean? Bring that kind of attention to himself. I'm this, I'm that, I'm the best this, I'm the best that. He did that a lot. And I think it turned some people off maybe from him a little bit. Now, man, it's all about business. And he conducts himself in such a way that he doesn't let anything distract now from what you just watched him do on the court. And I think that's been a major turn for him. He matured. He's become more of a leader. Understands now the expectations on him every single night and now what it is to live up to that. So just could not be happier that he got this award because he's put so much into it. He's been heartbroken a couple of years. I know it meant a lot to him. And now
it should mean look,
hopefully he doesn't think, okay, I got it, I'm good. Hopefully he wants to win 2 or 3 of these things.
I know Jokic says they asked him the other day, how much do you care about the MVP or whether you win the MVP this year? And he said 0, right? And I think knowing people in the Nuggets organization, I'm not friendly with Jokic, but like he doesn't care. Like the dude is competitive. He loves basketball. He wants to play basketball.
Yeah.
And doesn't care about all the stuff that comes with it. But like I like that it matters. I like that guys
same.
That's a goal. Like, dude, I was thinking this, like I always had high goals and I worked my ass off. But like, how good do you have to be to say
I don't care about
No. How good do you have to be like, my goal is to win the MVP, and that's like a realistic thing. Like, you and I, we could never make that goal.
No, not at all. No, you're writing down like you used to write down what you're hoping to accomplish that year and win MVP of the NBA.
Yeah.
Hopefully I get that. Wait, what about one more? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander?
Oh.
I was going to say him and Ant are probably in the same category.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, that's they have the potential. They have the potential to do it, but
okay.
Well, I guess Shai made it first. Will probably make first.
Deli section getting a little crowded now.
Yeah. It's like they're like peeking in the deli.
Yeah, right. Taking a look. They're over at a different aisle right now. They'll make their way over.
Yeah.
But I think they're good ones. Shai kind of blew me away this year watching him.
Yeah, that was an oversight. Again, we don't have like every team in front of us, and we're talking about a lot of different things. There's an apology. I'm sure we left off somebody. I'm sorry, Chet Holmgren. I don't know. I haven't seen you play yet. Did you guys see the voting? But I want to get your thoughts on both of you. I want to get your thoughts on this. So they had the Executive of the Year voting, and Tim Conley got a vote for 5th place, I believe it was. How do we feel about that?
Yeah.
How do we feel about that with the Rudy Gobert trade in hindsight?
Give me your thoughts first. I want to hear where you're going with this, and I'll piggyback.
In some ways, at the time, I'm going to go. This is not hindsight. At the time, I think the deal got done during our break this summer. I know we touched on this, and I brought this up very early in the season, and may have even brought it up on our preview podcast that we did for the Old Man and the Three Things when I talked about the Timberwolves, because you were a little bit higher on them than I was, and I was high on them, but a little bit higher. I like the concept, right? You're losing Pat Bev, right? I like the concept of, all right, we have 2 young offensive stars, and we're going to bring in Defensive Player of the Year, right? Rudy Gobert. And to a degree, when he was on the court this year, they had the equivalent of, I think, a top 5 defense, essentially. A little bit outside the top 1 or 2, but a top 5 defense. The problem for me, at least at the time, was you're taking Cat, who is a 5, is not particularly mobile as it is, and whose advantages offensively are as a 5, popping for threes, playing off of closeouts and driving 5s. And as we saw in that Clippers series, or the Clippers playing game when they went small, there's ways to mitigate his size with mismatches. So like, you're taking a guy whose best position is a 5, and then you're asking him to play the 4, and you just paid the guy $250 million. That part of it, I was like, it doesn't make sense to me. And that wasn't hindsight, because I talked about that early. And so that's kind of where I'm at. The fact he got a vote, that's like a little, to me, because now we're sitting here and we're like, okay, now you got to trade Cat. I mean, right? I mean, you got to figure out a way to build around Ant. And I don't know if this little trio together is long-term going to get you in a position where you're a contender.
You and I are on the same page. Actually, when this all broke over the summer and all the moves were made, different guys changed teams, I did this thing for NBA Today. I think there was 6 players they gave me that changed teams, and I had to label them difference maker or not. And I put not for Gobert. I didn't like it from the beginning because Karl Anthony Towns just had arguably the best year of his career playing center. And because a guy doesn't want to play there anymore, you kind of capitulate to him. Well, okay, let's figure out what we got to do to make sure he's not the 5 or doesn't feel like a 5. So in a league that's consistently getting more versatile, they got the opposite. They became less versatile, bigger, slower, less versatile all the way around. You added a guy also that at times, was taken off the court, in Utah in big moments for one reason or another, because, he had a hard time guarding a lineup with 5 smalls at the 3-point line. Offensively, he was getting fouled. Sometimes they take him off the court. I didn't like it from the beginning, and I thought they were kind of caving into what Karl Anthony Towns wanted rather than what's really best for our team and our franchise based on the year that he had just had.
Let me say this, because I think there's some revisionist history around Tim Conley, where I think prior to this, it was like Tim Conley is a great executive, and now people are questioning. I'm not in that camp. Tim Conley has a track record of being an excellent executive.
A sharp guy, I agree.
We are not privy to what we all know to be outside pressures in this league to make a move. So we don't know the inner workings of that. I'm sure there's articles in The Athletic. I'm sure Woj has some info. I don't know off the top of my head what was told to him in terms of making a deal and what the strategy was, and whether he had sole autonomy on this. I don't know. And maybe it's out there. I don't know off the top of my head. But again, I thought it was interesting that somebody voted on that when like now it's like, well, dude, like he's been crushed for 6 months. Is that it? But also, it was out of blue.
What's unfortunate is, besides giving up 75 first-round picks or however many they gave up, Kessler was as good as he was, and then Vanderbilt. We spent 20 minutes talking about it on a playoff show, and it's a guy that was a throw-in, and it's also weird that Utah gave him up for nothing. But like, think about how many playoff teams could use Jared Vanderbilt right now.
Oh, no doubt. And yeah, he's going to get this stage, a spotlight, depending on how long this run goes. Every time you watch him, you're more impressed with what he does. And I don't know if he'll ever be an above average shooter, but if he can make one or two of those occasionally with what he's doing with the other stuff, he's got incredible value in this league.
Can I throw one other guy out there?
We left a guy out. You just saw somebody pull up in the parking lot.
Can I throw one other guy out there? Oh man, Jason, who do you think it's going to be? It is a sleeper pick. It is a sleeper pick. I'm so high on this guy because I've been around him. Mm-hmm. Brandon Ingram.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I was thinking that.
Yeah.
BI.
Actually, when I first started this analogy, this was several years ago, 3 years ago probably, and I was thinking, projecting him out down the road, I think he was on that list. So I kind of forgot about him, mainly because
this was
sort of disappointing.
The 1920
year.
team, my first year in New Orleans, when he made his first All-Star game.
And that's what dudes like that look like. 6'11", get your own shot, right? Handle the ball.
Improved so much as a playmaker. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Got stronger early on. You could knock him off balance on his drives, and he couldn't finish through contact. He's added that. His frame doesn't look a lot different, but he's obviously a lot stronger. Yeah. Picked up on his handle. Improved his range. No, that's a good one.
Speaking of MVPs, let's go on to Jokic and the Nuggets versus the Suns. 2-0 series. I'm calling Game 3. Yes, Game 3 in Phoenix on Friday. Very excited about that. No CP. How much of a difference does that make or not make to you with not necessarily the ability to win this series, but just the ability to maybe get back into this series this weekend.
Yeah. I think, well, it's a huge loss, I think, because of the way he organizes them. Right? They get a little too quick with just trying to hit the home run ball when he's not on the court, and you saw that at the end of Game 2. I just didn't like the way their offense operated at all. So they're going to miss that tremendously. I think it's time for Kevin Durant, right, to have one of those nights in Game 3. I almost think he has to. To my point, how many games have the Phoenix Suns played so far in the postseason? How many of those games has he been their best player? Maybe one. Booker has been the guy, right? And I don't know if that's the formula for them to get back in the series or win the series or get to the finals. So I think Durant, and I think he very much recognized that. I didn't like the look on his face and the body language a little bit in Game 2.
Interesting.
He looked stressed out or something to me. He did.
Really?
Yeah, he just did.
Dude.
Yeah.
I'm not being combative.
Had a weird
right
look
now.
on his face.
But it's so weird because I am obsessed with body language.
Yeah, so am I.
And I'm obsessed with expressions. And it's one of the reasons I love calling games, because I'm so close that I get to see the interactions you can't see on TV.
Totally.
And I'm obsessed with it. I love watching teams huddles. I love watching players come out of huddles. I'm obsessed with it. And I didn't notice anything in Game 2.
Well, first of all,
I didn't notice anything.
I think you and I are like separated at birth in a lot of ways because I'm a diehard football fan. Talk about all the time, Washington Commanders. Yeah. So I go to every game and I have a pair of binoculars I take for one reason. I want to see the interaction of these dudes when they come off the field, like especially when Carson Wentz was there, because it was obvious to me immediately no one liked him. And I'm like, that's a problem. Like, he'd have a bad 3 and out, and no one is dapping him up coming off the field. He'd sit on the bench, and the only guy to come over to talk to was Taylor Heineke, like his backup. And I'm going, that's a really bad sign. Like, so I'm big on stuff like that. There was something about it, man. I didn't like the way he was presenting himself. I just didn't. And I think he's probably right now stewing about the position they're in. He's going to be the one that's going to have to carry this into the summer. And look, I don't think this is win at all costs this year for them because he's locked up and Booker's locked up, and so it's a matter of improving their team. And as long as he wins one while he's in Phoenix over the next 2 or 3 years, it will be a success, right? It'll be worth everything because that franchise never won a championship. So it doesn't have to be this year, but he'll still take the brunt of the criticism. We all know that. Even without Chris Paul, it'll be a little bit muffled because he's got a little bit of an excuse, they'll say. He's still going to get beat up because that's just the nature of it. So he's probably stewing right now, thinking the same thing that I just said, which is, all right, man, enough's enough. He hasn't been the best player on the floor yet. I think that's who Kevin Durant's going to be in Game 3, and he's going to have to be, I think, for them to get a win and feel like they're in this series because they got outplayed badly in Game 1. They had no answer defensively. Last game, it was more their offense let them down.
Yeah. I mentioned the second spectrum, QSI, QSQ, all that stuff. So in Game 2, he was 2 for 12 from 3, 10 of 27 overall. The shots he missed, essentially based on the looks, because we have the tracking data where we can say, all right, he's open by 7.5 feet, or that was a heavy contest or a wide open versus open. We have all that stuff. He was 16.8 percentage points less than the expected. The average Kevin Durant shooting game, he was 17 percentage points less than expected. So I think maybe if there was frustration, maybe it was just because he was missing fucking open shots, guy.
Yeah, maybe.
Because I saw interactions with him and Book, even when it was heavy there in the fourth, as Denver was kind of pulling away, like it looked good to me. I don't know. I'm not. Again, I didn't see that.
Well, when you get out there, just go up to him before the game, put your arm around him, say, "Listen, Legs is concerned. He said you look a little stressed. Is everything okay? Like, what's going on?" And he's gonna say, "No, motherfucker, we're down 2-0. It's not okay." That's what you're saying, and I think that's probably true. Like, and I think he was just like, I think also it seemed like they were running in mud a little bit offensively because it was a low scoring game and they just couldn't get anything going. They couldn't sustain a run.
This is what I really wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
Because we briefly talked about it yesterday. So happens a lot in the regular season. It happens a lot more in the playoffs. The targeting and the matchup hunting that we see from a lot of teams. I think it's one of the reasons that at times the Celtics struggle down the stretch because there's a difference to me. And Phoenix, in Game 2 at times in that fourth, it was like, all right, Book, go get a bucket, or KD, go get a bucket. There's a difference to me between bringing a guy up, getting the matchup you want, and then going one-on-one with a set defense at the top of the key or on the wing, right? Everybody's dialing, everybody's looking at you. 3 guys
locked in, staring at you. Yeah.
Like, there's a difference. And look, I don't have the numbers in front of me. It feels like at the end of game, a lot of teams do that, and I don't feel like it's very efficient.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways to me to mix in a different way to target and find the mismatch you want. For example, let's say you want Jamal Murray on Kevin Durant. Can you set an Iverson cut screen at the foul line and have Kevin curl to an open wing and catch and go against either no switch or against a switch with Jamal Murray? Can you do that? I loved in one of the Boston games, they wanted Trey in the action, but instead of just bringing him up where he was going to show 3 times and eventually with 4 seconds left on the shot clock, he'd switch, right? We see that all the time. They put him as the screener in Spain action.
Right.
They put his guy as the screener in Spain action. So then if they do switch, it's late and Tatum's at 8 feet or Brown's at 8 feet. Like I like that so much more than just the dead ball, look at a guy, look at 4 guys at boxes and elbows. I think I would like to see more, and I think Monty has done this historically with Book. I didn't see a ton of that in Game 2.
That was pretty much all you saw in the fourth quarter is what you're talking about. That get maybe one screen, maybe not. Maybe just advance the ball to one guy, either Booker or Durant, and now just go. And if you could take a still picture of any of those possessions, it's exactly what they were looking at behind them. 3 guys, one guy on the edge lane, one guy at the elbow, one guy like on the opposite block or middle of the lane, just staring at you. Now go make an incredibly difficult contested jumper. And then they started running guys at Durant once he put it down. So everything was a lean back, He fell down a couple times shooting jump shots because he was leaning back that far. To your point earlier about Chris Paul, one of the Suns' favorite actions they like to run is Devin Booker starts down on the baseline. Chris Paul will take it toward the wing, and Booker will either set an up screen for Ayton and then pop out, catch it, and then immediately get another ball screen from the other elbow at the same time that whoever was in that strong side is emptying out. So he comes off, and it's so quick hitting. They got to make quick decisions defensively. He comes off, maybe he gets the matchup he wants, but more importantly, he's got the whole side to himself now, and he's got space. With Chris Paul off the floor, Booker was the guy bringing the ball up the court all the time. So immediately he was coming up trying to think about scoring because they were in that situation we need to get a bucket here. It's critical. It's a low-scoring game. Every possession was heightened. We got to match. We got to get a bucket here. So it's immediately all that pre-action motion and movement that makes it easier for shooters to catch the ball when someone's now running at them, or if you've gotten some space. He didn't really get any of that. Everything was off the dribble, hand in his face, draped on him. Same with Durant. And so now what's the adjustment going to be for Monty? Chris Paul can't go in game 3 because it can't look like that the entire game because they have no shot. They'll get swept if that's how they plan on trying to beat the Denver Nuggets. Just these two guys, I joke all the time, be great is not a play set, right? That's not good enough. You got to help them with some action. And so, if Chris Paul's not there, that makes it a lot harder.
Is there a world, and maybe this is too optimistic, but it's a Ross or Campaign or someone like that who has not either played or played particularly well over the last few games where they offer a different look offensively than somebody like Chris, and you can actually open up the bench a little bit?
Yeah, you can. And Cameron Payne is one of those guys right now. I mean, he's definitely struggling a little bit, right? But it's amazing how if especially if you know for 48 hours, Chris isn't playing.
Yeah.
What that does for you, the pressure you're putting yourself on in limited minutes, and when you're not playing well, kind of snowballs against you because you want it to happen so badly, and you're squeezing the ball too tight, and that's kind of what Cameron Payne looks like a little bit. He missed a couple of drives to his left hand that he usually makes with his eyes closed. He missed. I think he's pressing, but now it's well, they have no one else to go to, and you have that talk, put your arm around him at shoot around yesterday, and it's hey, man, it's going to be you right here going forward. They have a lot of faith in you. It's amazing how that can maybe help jumpstart you and get you a little bit more relaxed. So he'll probably play better in game 3.
So the other thing I wanted to ask about was the other side of this, which is the Nuggets D. They're allowing 107.9 points per 100 possessions in the playoffs, which is third behind the Knicks and the Lakers. There was 114.7 in the regular season, which is 14th. Is there anything in particular that they have done that you've been impressed by? Just with the same personnel, basically.
But I don't know if there's anything different in terms of what they're throwing at people. They're just playing with an awful lot of certainty, determination. And Bruce Brown's been unbelievable what he's brought to them with his energy and his versatility for a guy that size, the number of people he can guard. They're almost just playing with such an edge. That is the difference between anything that you might see in the regular season. I mean, they've been solid. Now, though, they're locked in, man. There's 5 guys on a string, and they've got some very good individual defenders that have really taken on the challenge. And I think he's been a guy that has stood out to me with his energy for them.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say is I think this goes back to the regular season playoff thing, right? And so one of the valuable things about a regular season, 82-game regular season that really informs us about who a team is the strengths, the weaknesses, ways you can exploit, right? Yeah. And so I think you get into a playoff series, and depending on the matchup, again, you can exploit certain things. And so I think the defensive, offensive rating stuff, it's hard because if you run into a bad matchup, oh, your defense sucks in the playoffs. Well, yeah, but in an 82-game season, we can afford to running into a bad matchup because guess what? The next night we got the fucking Pistons,
right,
what I mean?
Right,
whoever.
Right. Right.
So I think it. Some of that, and again, it's like a 5 games here, 6 games, whatever it is. It's hard to really get a lot out of that for me. I think more it's what is a team doing? What is a team doing well? And I think because I talked about some of this stuff on Monday's show, Tommy, with Jokic being so far up. The only guy, and again, he's now hurt, but the only guy that they were really playing really heavy drop with was Chris Paul. With Durant and Booker, vast majority of the time, he's all the way at the level. He's most comfortable doing that, and they just rely on their athletes on the backside to rotate, and they've done a great job. And Michael Porter Jr. a lot of times is that low man, and he's pulling over so far, and they're saying like, he's on Ish Wainwright, he's on Okogie, he's on Torrey Craig. You're gonna like, okay, fuck it. If they swing it to that guy and we get a late contest, like we're willing to live with that.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back, I think, to that matchup thing, right? That's the exploit. That's what we're trying to exploit. We want that guy to beat us. That's no great decisions out there, but if that's the decision, that's the guy we want to sort of live with beating us. We're willing to do that.
So you're calling game 3?
Yes.
What are your expectations then? What do you think is going to happen? From Phoenix's standpoint, especially.
A question I have is do they mix in a little bit more doubles? So I felt, especially in game 2, they were up farther on the Jamal Murray pick and rolls than they were in game 1.
Yeah.
They did a great job. I thought when they got into their 2-man dance with the dribble handoffs, I thought they did a great job of being attached. It was not as pretty as it they were.
First game was a joke. I mean,
the same sets, but it was like they were just moving it. Yeah, it was like holy shit.
It's embarrassing. Like they were embarrassing them in a lot of ways.
So I think about that, right? So to me, you're going to put that emphasis on Murray, and you're like, all right, we're going to live, because I think Jokic was 4 for 11 with Ayton as the primary defender in game 1. We're going to live with some one-on-one stuff. Do they double more? Do they make Jokic a passer out of the post? Do they all of a sudden say, you know what, fuck it. We're going to do our best to contain Aaron Gordon's cuts, but if he stays out on the perimeter, we're willing to live with him shooting threes. We're going to rotate, and if he's the guy that gets it, we're willing to live with that. So that's something I'm looking for. I think Murray does have a bounce-back game.
Definitely.
I think he has a bounce-back game, and I think Phoenix tries to muck it up again. I think I said this yesterday on First Take, I think they had a winning formula in that game. And it was some timely 3-point shooting in the fourth quarter for the Nuggets. It was some misses of some open looks on the other end for Phoenix. And it was Jokic's dominance. And because they allowed him to play one-on-one a lot of the game, he ate.
Do you think Phoenix can win the game if Kevin Durant doesn't go for, like what I was saying earlier, like a 35-point night efficiently? Do you think that they can win the game if he goes for 26 and he's under 50% from the field shooting and doesn't get to the line much? Don't you think it's going to take like him being great to beat that team?
Yes, it does, and I think Book has to be great too. But it's funny how we look at greatness, right? Because if he goes for 30 and shoots 58% and 40% from 3, that's an average game.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Like they're going to need that at the very least. But I think with I think a big thing you're talking about is now all of a sudden like a thin team got thinner, and the Book thing playing on the ball, how they look to use him as a scorer and passer when he is the primary ball handler, that's going to be interesting. Does Kevin take on some of that responsibility and just say, fuck it, I'm going to fucking bring Ayton up and we're going to play out of that?
It's a color analyst dream, JJ, that you have going. Like there's so many things to be looking for, because they've got a lot of stuff that they've got to, right? They've got to put some flex seal on.
The rotation stuff is interesting to me with them, because they went with Londale too in game 2. I think Biyombo got the early run, then they went with Londale.
Also, the one thing they were getting in the Clipper series, they haven't gotten so far. Torrey Craig, Okogie, right? Okogie had that great stretch in the regular season where he's making corner threes. Yeah. Torrey Craig was great in the Clipper series.
Did they I don't
need that too.
I'm trying to remember. Did they run with Ayton out in the second half? Did they run Torrey Craig at the 5 at all?
Yeah, he ran some 5
when Gordon was in.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think they run that back. I like that for Phoenix a lot. I like that for Phoenix.
I think they're going to need some 3-point shooting from that collection of other guys, whether it's between them, Craig, Okogie, Damian Lee, Cameron Payne, put a number on it. Those guys probably have to make 10 threes. You know what I mean? To take some of that pressure of Denver just loading up, waiting on Booker and Durant to try to make these very difficult mid-range jump shots. Man, it would loosen things up if they could do it.
I have a question for both you guys. As of May 3rd, are the Nuggets favorites?
I think right now they should be. Right now, as we sit here, they should be. Yeah. They've been, it's been the cleanest sheet, what they've done, right? So it's almost not fair to them. They were the number 1 seed, and they've had the cleanest run here, right? Now, look, there's a lot to be still seen in the Boston-Philly series we haven't seen.
Yes.
And obviously, the way this Golden State Lakers thing plays out, depending on how those teams get through that, whoever that is, that either one of those teams, what they're going to have to do to win that series could be so convincing that maybe one of those teams is going to represent the West. Denver might not be favored in the conference finals as a result of that. But as we sit here right now, I think Denver should be listed as the favorite.
However you want to break it down, whether it is odds or whether it's whatever you call it, the favorite. I said they've been the most impressive team. They've been the most complete team to me.
Yeah.
There's nothing that
agree.
I've seen where like, oh, there's a big exploitation. There's a big mismatch that people can go after. And I specifically, I think about the potential for that Warriors rematch from last year's first round. The addition of KCP, Christian Brown, Bruce Brown, those are the 3 guys now that are going to be involved in a lot of that post-split action, off-ball action. It's a better matchup. It really is a better matchup for them than it was last year when I didn't think they had the personnel to play that team. And Golden State, outside of that one game, really just, it was not a good series if you were a Nuggets fan. Real quick, because you brought it up, rather than belabor stuff about game 2, which we have no idea what it's going to look like, we have no idea what it's going to be like for Joel, we're just going to kind of overlook Celtics-Philly. I think it's going to be a fantastic series. I'm excited to watch the game tonight. We will be touching on it on Monday's show on the Old Man of the 3 Things. By the way, the Old Man of the 3 Things is free this week. It's off the paywall. So it's on our normal Old Man of the 3 feed. You can find it anywhere. Also available exclusively on Amazon Music every single week. All right, before we let you go, the last question, the Roback question, reminder to our viewers that you can use the code OLD at roback.com for 20% off your first purchase. That's RHOBACK.com, code OLD. Tim, you walked in here today.
Yeah.
We're going to give you some free gear.
Yeah.
And you walked in with the Roback
and
performance
I had no idea that was
coming.
coming.
I did not tell you.
Had no idea. I just love the gear, man.
It's the best.
You're speaking my language. Yeah, I'm one of those guys, too. I'm like one of those obsessive people that I'll try something new. I'll get the one Roback hoodie because I don't know. Get it in the mail. You put it on. Like the next day, I'm online ordering 6 new colors. Like it's just kind of like what I do. I've got a lot of Roback gear right now.
We talked about preparation.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you how preparation as an athlete and preparation as a basketball analyst, how they compare, how they differ.
Oh, man. Well, preparation as an athlete is like it consumes your entire life. It's every minute of every day because you're either preparing for playing or you're taking care of your body. That's all playing into preparation. So literally, it never leaves you when you're still playing. Right? Every day is about that all the time, even in the offseason. That's all, you're thinking about that constantly. As an analyst, it's a little bit different. It's like game by game, moment by moment, and then once you've done that and you've dived into something, and I'm pretty sick with note taking. I mean, I might get 18 to 20 pages of notes
on a single game,
on one game,
yeah,
because I don't want to leave it to chance. When I say I saw something and have someone go try to find that in the tape, no, I'm going to tell you where to find it. These 3 plays are going to tell the story that I want to tell. If I don't write those down and make a note during the game, how in the world am I going to remember that, right? So now you're just trusting somebody. So I'm kind of sick that way when I watch a game. That's why a lot of times I go invited to go to the game, and I'm kind of like, to do my job now. Like last night, I could have gone to the Knicks game, and I'm like, it's actually better for my job to not, because I see more when I'm watching on television rather than being there and you're distracted. There's all kinds of stuff going on. You don't get any replay. It's just harder for me to be that good the next day on the air. So it's all consuming about that event, but then you can kind of release it a little bit, right? Until the next time when you're ready, prepared to go do it. With an athlete, it just never leaves you. It's just constantly 24/7, 365 all the time until you finally kind of walk away from it.
It's a great answer. As we discussed, both huge fans of the brand. Tim, you're the man. This has been awesome.
Appreciate it, man.
As I've told you a million times, you're welcome to do this with us anytime.
Great combos, man. I'm right here anytime.